I have contended that this leak came from a conservative on the court. And just as a refresher, there are, aside from different theories as to who had helped or didn't help in terms of releasing this, and whether the release of this was to lock in the 5 votes that were there, when we now know that John Roberts was attempting to lobby 5 of these right-wingers on the court, specifically Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, attempting to lobby them to, instead of overturning Roe v. Wade, sort of half overturning it by simply signing on to Mississippi's 15-week ban, as opposed to blowing out the Roe v. Wade protections, the first individual right, in my awareness, that has been reversed by the Supreme Court. There were 2 other leaks that I want people to remember about this. Actually, play the Heritage Foundation.
So one of the most remarkable features about the court in an age of incessant leaks is the confidentiality that long covered its internal deliberations. Unfortunately, that changed this last term with the horrific and completely unprecedented leak of your draft majority opinion in Dobbs. How has the leak affected the
All right,
court?
pause this. Now, first off, there's a couple things that you know, as we analyze Alito's comments at this time, this is the first time he is addressing the leak. We have heard from Kagan, and we heard from, was it Roberts, has referenced the investigation. I don't know that we've heard from any other Supreme Court justice. Understand 2 things about that question from the Heritage Foundation guy. One, Alito completely aware that the question is coming. There is no way, no how, that Sam Alito is sitting on that stage without having questions beforehand. Absolutely not. Absolutely 100% guaranteed. And I would say, not just awareness of what questions are coming, but the placement. This is at the very end of the conversation. And I suspect done so that this is not lingering out there. But he clearly, and I would say that it's also quite possible that Alito specifically wanted this question at this time. Why would he want this question? We do not know where the investigation stands, although there was indication, I think, from Kagan about, a little while ago that we're a month out, maybe, or so, or something like that. Some reference. There's no way the announcement's going to come before the election. No way. Roberts is going to hold that until after the election. It is not the case that this leak is unprecedented. First of all, there has been, there was one time where there was a front running of a brief that got out. But in terms of leaks as to what's being deliberated, this is actually the second one that I can point to. One was in 2012, when the conservatives were very angry that John Roberts split the baby on the Affordable Care Act. You may not recall, but in the Affordable Care Act went in front of the Supreme Court in a case that, and I sat out in a building across the street from there and interviewed maybe a dozen Supreme Court constitutional professors. And they all thought the entire thing was more or less bunk. However, Roberts basically said they don't have to expand Medicaid, which was, people thought was the most ridiculous part of that entire thing. Like, it's a federal program.
Right.
The feds can decide what they do with that program, and they were paying for it. And then there was a leak. I think it was to the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post. I can't remember which paper. Talking about the deliberations and the anger that John Roberts was the one who pushed it. I mean, this was a concerted effort by conservatives to punish John Roberts publicly. Remember, these people's brains don't operate like you know ours. this is so much of this is about status and legacy for these people, particularly for John Roberts. In the weeks prior to the leak of the brief, there was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal owned by Rupert Murdoch. It is a conservative publication about the deliberations that were going on. And again, going after John Roberts, who was attempting to sway them. So the leak, this was not an unprecedented leak. It was unprecedented to see a working decision. But it wasn't unprecedented in the sense that this decision's deliberations were leaked to the Wall Street Journal enough so that they could actually write an editorial based upon those leaks. Okay, and this is important because if you want to determine who is the leaker, you look as to where they're leaking to is a big part of it.
And the Wall Street Journal was also involved in this latest leak. Is that not the case? I mean, the original brief was leaked to Politico, but wasn't there some sort of follow-up about...
they had more information on it as well. And so now, why would Alito want to address this now? Again, there's no way this question is asked if Sam Alito doesn't want this question. My speculation is he wants to set the table for how they're going to respond if the investigation is over and it turns out that it is someone who was, let's say, on Alito's clerk staff. What would you characterize it if someone he knew, without his permission, leaked this? Let's listen.
Term with the horrific and completely unprecedented leak of your draft majority opinion in Dobbs. How has the leak affected the court?
It was a grave betrayal of trust by somebody, and it was a shock because nothing like that had happened in the past. So
pause it for 1 second. I'm sorry. We're going to go back. I want you to listen to what he is saying. Everything is in the passive voice. It was a shock. To whom? It was a betrayal. Of whom? He could say of the court. He could say to all of us. He's being very non-specific here. Because I think on one hand, he doesn't want to indicate who this person might be at this time. But he also wants to be able to set the table that he has been victimized by this. Go back a little bit.
In Dobbs, how has the leak affected the court?
It was a grave betrayal of trust by somebody, and it was a shock because nothing like that had happened in the past. So it certainly changed the atmosphere at the court for the remainder of last term. The leak also made those of us who were thought to be in the majority in support of overruling Roe and Casey targets for assassination, because it gave people a rational reason to think they could prevent that from happening by killing one of us. And we know that a man has been charged with attempting to kill Justice Kavanaugh. It's a pending case, so I won't say anything more about that. But that was last term. Now we're in a new term. I think that all of us want to, all of the justices, and I think the people who work in the building, we have a wonderful staff, I'll add that, want things to get back to normal, the way they were before all this last term, before COVID. Get back to normal to the greatest degree.
All right, possible. We're not there. Okay, he's no longer talking about it. Now, he brings up this unique circumstance where the conservatives are being targeted for assassination.
Oh, what was them?
Well, I mean, we don't want that.
No, we don't. But I mean,
we don't want that. But it's not that unique.
No.
Put up this headline. You'll recall that Sonia Sotomayor was targeted by a gunman. He doesn't contextualize that whatsoever. He is answering that question, and he is getting that question because he is starting to build the foundation of an argument that he was victimized by this, even though it may not appear that he was victimized by this in the first instance. That's what it appears to me. I don't know. It's a speculation and largely irrelevant at this moment, but it's the fun half.
So then I guess if it is someone on his staff or someone on one of the conservative justices' staffs, then what is the whole reasoning behind the "we are targets of assassination" tact?
You're about to throw somebody under the bus.
Right.
And you want to claim that you were just as victimized, if not more so, by this. I mean, it was a betrayal.
I know, but isn't the if the contention is that the leak was a way to benefit the conservative justices and kind of provide some sort of softer landing for once Roe is overturned?
Well, it wasn't so much that it was a softer landing. The reason why it benefited the conservative justices, it was a way to discipline Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett.
Yes, okay.
And this was not, I believe, this leak, a media strategy. This was a strategy to lock in those 5 votes and end John Roberts' attempt to lobby them and sway them. Because it's one thing for them to take the step going forward and begin to chop away at Roe. It's another to be perceived as having already gotten rid of Roe and then walking it back. And I think there's the use of like betrayal and the idea that this was only detrimental to the conservatives. Those two things suggest to me that he is trying to create a narrative that even though it was by somebody who was it's somewhat aligned with the majority, it ended up being a betrayal and they were victimized by it.
Okay, well, I mean, they're conservatives, so they're going to victimize themselves regardless. But I am interested in the future of this leaker, right? If they were... Alito is presenting this and lying publicly, it seems, to
this is all speculation.
Right, okay, probably lying, speculating that he's lying publicly about his opinion on the betrayal, if that's the case. If the effort was to lock in Roberts so that they were able to finally overturn Roe. Then if they excommunicate this staffer or this clerk...
I've already made this prediction too.
You've said that they're going to go get hired by the...
18 months. And
so it doesn't matter what he's saying now. They're going to huff and puff and blow the house down. And then once the dust settles, conservative
they're going to announce this sometime in December around Christmas time. It's going to come out. It's going to be a story for 2 weeks. That may even be an exaggeration. It's going to be a story for 2 days. And it's the guy's going to be chastised. And then you're going to read a piece in the New Republic sometime in like late 2023, which is like that guy Jim Stevenson is now at the Heritage Foundation and also maybe a fellowship at
it's quite a gamble. It's quite a gamble to then have your name forever associated with this leak. And in conservative circles, I guess, like at the very least, maybe they have a respect for you behind the scenes, but having a public kind of shaming spectacle, that this clerk, if your theory is right, will always be associated with this forever.
Oh yeah, and that clerk is going to be heralded for it. But
publicly shamed by Alito?
Just in that moment. But then they forget. Redemption story. I mean, none of this sticks. None of this sticks to them.
I know.
None of it. There's a second woman coming out right now who's going to talk about Herschel Walker and pushing him to have an abortion. And it's not. If he wins, that's all they care. That's all they care. That's all they care. Ollie North. Perfect example, Golden's Oyster Cult. They promised to throw the leaker under the bus now for future conservative TV success like Ollie North. I mean, yeah. This is the way they go. You're applying standards to them that are...
I'm not even applying it. I'm just trying to work it out in your head. Like any kind of like logical understanding would be like, it's very difficult for to have the conservative justices who are at the pinnacle of like what conservative legal minds actually want to achieve, throw you under the bus publicly and hope that you're going to have a career in conservative law. But as you say,
I'll tell you what
he's delivered, and I believe what you're saying. I just feel like it's a larger leap than of the more craven things that these guys do.
Written statement from Alito. I cannot express the level of betrayal that I feel at this moment. This is someone I trusted, could have never known. This led to all sorts of problems for myself and my fellow justices in the majority. I cannot express the level of disappointment that I have. And that will be the last thing he ever says about it. And then, next time he goes over to the Heritage Foundation or wherever it is, like, hey, nice to see you. How's the kids? Everything good? Oh, yeah, everything's great. In fact, I've just been nominated to be Solicitor General under Ron DeSantis' administration. God. I mean, honestly, like, do you think they're beyond that?
Yeah.
Oh, my God, no.
No.
Not at all. I mean, they wouldn't make him Solicitor General because, maybe there's... But maybe they would.
You're not going to put him out in the cold, though.
No. Oh, God, no. That person's going to be very warm and toasty. Maybe a federal judge. They'll give him a federal judgeship. Depends on how young that person is.